Greetings. My name is Joan Bishop, Executive Director of the Oley Foundation. I want to thank you for tuning in to this special announcement today. I'll begin by saying it's no surprise that I turned 75 this year. And while I was reflecting on what a wonderful 75 years it has been, at least what I can remember. But my thoughts shifted to the fact that another milestone is that I've entered my 40th year serving the Oley Foundation community. And it's been wonderful. Life is good. But then my thoughts quickly shifted to, okay, you're in a leadership position. Life is good, but have you been responsible in not having a succession plan in place? I had a few conversations with board members recently, and at the end of a 2-day retreat, I was told that they have a succession plan in place for me, and it's a good plan. So life is even better. I can breathe again and resume celebrating my first 75 years. Transitioning to new leadership has begun. It will be seamless. All that you may notice is that the approach to serving the Oley Foundation community will be new and improved, and I look forward to being a part of this important shift. So I'm not going anywhere soon. In fact, at the end of this meeting, I plan to begin searching for a site for Oley 2023, which will be planned as an in-person event with a virtual arm. So it's safe to say I will see you in 2023. Now, before I introduce you to the new executive director, I'd like to share a few thoughts about the first 40 years at Oley. Well, I began working with Dr. Lynn Howard in her clinical nutrition micronutrient clinic. It was amazing to learn from this wonderful, extremely committed and passionate person who devoted years and years of learning and working with the home parenteral nutrition and enteral patients to keep them at home, not only alive, but living life. I mean, it was extremely inspiring. So I also need to share a few things that come to mind is there were no computers in our office. We typed. We opened mail. We had envelopes placed on our desk every day. There was no email. Our building was not networked. We had a board member, son, Michael Freeman, set a website up for Oley, but we couldn't view it from our office. We had to go to Albany Medical Center offices and lean over someone's shoulder to be able to view what he had put in place and offer suggestions. When we learned soon after that the building would be networked, we learned we were getting email addresses. First thought we had was, well, I hope we remember to open it, and how life has changed now. So, and thoughts about what the future will bring. I hope that we are able to sort through the reimbursement issues that we're faced with. I hope that we are able to continue our important work serving the community. And I also hope that the financial situation that we face every year continues to keep us fiscally strong and able to do our work. So that's just a snippet of what I'm hoping for, and I hope it's met with the enthusiasm that we have enjoyed over my first 40 years. So I look forward to my 75 and the next 40 with Oley. So for now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Beth Gore, who just rotated off of the board of directors, where she was serving as president, and introduce her as the someone who is assuming the position and title of Oley Foundation Executive Director. I look forward to what the future holds with Beth at the helm.
Thank you, Oley Foundation Board of Trustees, and thank you, Joan. I'm honored and humbled and a little bit overwhelmed. After nearly 40 years of working for Oley and as the executive director for 43 years, Joan, you leave huge shoes to fill. As the executive director emeritus, we are hoping that Joan will be doing the things that she loves, still quite involved, still providing vision, support, and continuity, and doing less and less of the day-to-day operations of the business. Many of you know me, but for those who don't, my story is I am Beth Gore. I live with my husband Dan in Tampa, Florida, with our 6 children, all adopted with special needs. The reason I come to nutrition support is for our youngest, whose name is Manny. He's now 13 years old. He started out as a tube feeder and then ended up with TPN since the age of 2. And at 13, he will be on TPN for the rest of his life. One day I was speaking as a keynote speaker at a conference, and this woman came up afterwards and said, "Hey, can you come speak for us?" That turned out to be Joan Bishop of the Oley Foundation. I came to Oley the very first time. People had told us in hushed tones that, TPN was life-limiting and very challenging, and we had found that to be quite true. But we went to Oley and I found my people. I remember thinking, wow, where have these people been all my life? Tube feeding, TPN, and they knew what my life was like. And that was pretty amazing. But what was most amazing is that people knew how to live, not just be alive, but live, truly live. That's what Oley has done for me and for my family. And so somewhere along the way, I felt the need to start to give back. I became the president. And very recently, the Board of Trustees asked me to step up in this role as Executive Director, because I'm one of you. But I have lots to learn. And I come from a patient safety and patient advocacy world and background. In the fall, the Oley Board will be doing some strategic planning. We're going to be seeking feedback between now and then on the key priorities and to see, what do you think should be our key priorities? What should we focus on? And I'll share with you what I'm hoping we will do. One, I'm hoping we will continue to put an emphasis on these educational opportunities such as webinars, annual conference, and so forth. I'm hoping that number 2, we will focus on our membership, both enhancing current member engagement and also identifying and acquiring new members. And number 3, I hope we will increase our national advocacy efforts. For example, Oley just participated in an FDA listening session with consumers and caregivers sharing their experiences. It was quite amazing. I can tell you one really quick story behind the scenes of that. As we were doing the tech demonstration and tech check before the FDA listening session, we had our cameras off, and my children texted me and said, "Uh-oh, something's wrong with Manny's line. Can you check it?" So sure enough, I kept on my Zoom live, but my video off, and Manny needed a dressing change. So I did it right then and there. Somewhere along the way, I thought, oh man, it's so good that they can't see what I'm doing. And then I realized, you know what? It would have been better had I left the camera on. They could have seen a day in the life and what it's really like, moment by moment. Like I said, I'm one of you. This is my daily life. Right now, I believe that many in our community believe, and so do I, that we are at a critical crossroad in the world of nutrition support. This is why I think it's so important that we work on national advocacy efforts. For this crisis, it's not just one thing, it's many that have come together all at the same time. And like a snowball gaining speed as it rolls down the hill, when will this hit critical mass? I don't know, but I think it's soon, and so do others. We're dealing with things like reimbursement issues, the stuff that comes, the components, whether it's tube feeding or IV nutrition, the stuff is costing more and yet they're not being reimbursed higher. The same thing with specialists. They're not being reimbursed at the level that they need to. And so specialists are coming out of this industry and not rejoining. At Aspen, for example, we had an entire symposium on just this conversation. And then, of course, we're dealing with shortages, supply chain issues, the worst in this industry's history. And ever looming are things like dual therapy coverage issues, like my own son. He has sometimes that he needs trophic feeds, and that's just not covered. There are issues that are happening that need to be addressed on a national basis. Oley's been part of some conversations recently. Should we be part of a coalition, for example? Aspen, NHIA, DDNC, and a whole bunch of other alphabet soup stakeholder groups have gotten our heads together to say, hey, what could that be? We haven't decided yet, but we think that this is important, and I think Oley should take this on. Maybe it's a national bill of rights for patients on home nutrition support. I've heard Dr. Howard once say that she feels like a failure. And I thought, how can you, as a co-founder of such an important organization as the Oley Foundation, feel like a failure? And she said, because 50 years later, we got people out of the hospital and to home. And he said, now they're in danger of going back in now. They're in danger of going back in now because of things like this national crisis that we're talking about. So I want you to ask yourself, how can I get involved? So one, I call on the consumers and caregivers. One of the most important things that you can do is to use your voice. My personal motto is speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. Will you do that? And will you join with me? Number two, I call on the clinicians and the industry partners. Join us in this. We cannot do this alone. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to Joan Bishop for having served the Oley community for so faithfully, for so long. And as Oley enters its 40th year, we will be taking the opportunity to celebrate where we have been. I look forward to working with our community to answer, where do we go from here? What will Oley look like in the next 40 years? And so my call to action is, get involved, use your voice, and as Dr. Howard, our co-founder, says, onward.